Government department figures indicate that there's only a bit over 1% of old-growth mountain ash forest left that's unburned and unlogged. This indicates just how precious a magnificent specimen like this is. Clearly, there's an urgent need to value any maturing forests that are left across the landscape and preserve them so that they can grow on to this kind of stature in the future for the sake of future generations and for the sake of the environment and the climate and all the biosystem services that a mature forest provides to human and all other life around it. One aspect of current logging practices that I'd like to mention is that the Forest Management Plan allows the industry to take trees that are post-1900 in origin. In other words, trees that are up to 114 years of age. Now this rule controls what they do with mountain ash. We believe taking any trees that are approaching any form of maturity is unacceptable. But the rules clearly allow them to take trees that are 110, 114 years of age without breaking any rules. Those same rules don't apply to other species apart from mountain ash. Mountain grey gums and messmates can be taken, they might be 2 centuries old and they can still be taken out, yet they're truly old growth elements of the forest. There is a scattering of trees still throughout the Talangi Forest and Central Highlands landscape that are in the age class approaching 100 to 110 years of age, even 75-year-old 1939 regenerating forest or recovering forest post Black Friday 1939. That has reached 75 years of age, is just beginning to show some signs of maturity, and logically we would like to see it grow on to maturity where it begins to develop hollows, begins to have more significance to the biodiversity of the region. And if we could stop the logging operations from taking out any further of these maturing elements of the forest, we could look forward in years to come, say 50 years' time, there would be more mature trees to look at and more reflective of this kind of environment I'm standing in at the moment. In 100 years' time there would be even more. So we're really thinking of future populations, future generations, and a wonderful outcome for conservation and for the city of Melbourne, which needs this on its doorstep, needs a new Great Forest National Park on its doorstep. This remarkable tree gives us an indication of the size of mature mountain ash, but it doesn't actually give us an indication of the height that they achieved in ages past. Out of some historical research I was doing in the 1990s, I found a lot of references to the huge height of mountain ash trees that were recorded by splitters and timber mill operators in the past. And a few kilometres to the east of here, there was a giant tree measured by an inspector of state forests by the name of William Ferguson. It happened in 1872, just a few kilometres out of Healesville. And he found a huge tree that had fallen, and he was able to measure it on the ground with a tape, so he quite accurately measured the height of the tree at 435 feet from the roots to a break in the trunk. And at the break in the trunk it was 3 feet thick, so that's 133 metres from the roots to the break in the trunk. He stood on the trunk at the break and looked to where the tree had fallen, and you could see parts of the crown out in front of him. And Ferguson in 1872 put in a report stating that when the tree was standing it would have topped 500 feet or 150 metres. So that's an indication that we had in the Central Highlands of Victoria the tallest trees in the world, the tallest trees ever measured on the planet, exceeding the height of the tallest Californian trees such as the redwood or the Douglas fir. by perhaps 30 metres or more.
And isn't it astonishing that that's not well known around Victoria? What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, it's not widely known. It's been published in, my report was published in Victorian Naturalist, and it subsequently found its way into the Guinness Book of Records as the tallest tree ever measured on the planet. But it's still not talked about very much. But of course, it's very difficult to reproduce the circumstances that enabled these trees to reach that massive height, because it takes centuries.
And approximately how much old growth is left around here?
There's very little old growth left. It's usually in isolated trees rather than forest zones or regions. It's quite often a mixed age forest that can have anything from 1939 regeneration to very young saplings to a few scattered very old remnants like this one. Very few have this kind of stature, but there are some old remnants scattered about the state forest, but not enough of them to actually constitute a forest of mature trees.